Welcome to the first episode of what we hope to be many more, of a new show called Coming to the KiMo, a preview of coming attractions. I'm your host, Tony Della Flora. The KiMo Theater is, of course, one of Albuquerque's great landmarks. Opened in 1927, the theater survived a major fire in the 60s, and with the aid of several facelifts and updates, remains one of the most marvelous buildings in the Southwest. But the topic of today's show is what's going on at the theater this summer, from movies to bodybuilding competitions. With me today to tell us what's coming to the KiMo is General Manager Larry Parker. Larry, thanks for being here. We've been threatening to do a show together for a long time, and now we finally get to sit down and do it.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So, first of all, for people who don't know you or the KiMo, how long have you been managing over there?
I've been with the KiMo for 6 years now. I started in April 2008.
Okay.
So.
And why did you want to go work at the KiMo?
Well, I was looking for a job. That always helps.
Okay.
But the KiMo, I mean, it is a remarkable piece of architecture.
Right.
The mandate that I got very early on from the current administration was to really kind of revitalize and bring lots of new programming to the theater. When I started in 2008, it was primarily a rental house, which meant people, outside groups would call up and say, hi, I have ABC event. I want to be there on this week of this month. Are we available?
Right.
And then we would, sign the contract and make the venue available.
Okay.
Since about 2010 or 11, the thrust has been not only to sort of supplement the third-party rentals to the KiMo, which are about 60 to 65% of our annual business, with programming that the city is responsible for, and a lot of that really ended up being the film program that we currently have going on.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say before, I mean, my impression of things before you got there was the KiMo was probably vacant 5 nights out of the week on a good week,
Yeah.
And now almost practically every night there's something going on.
Well,
there, right?
the two things to remember, we have 2 very distinct seasons at the KiMo.
Okay.
But also, when I started in 2008, I think we averaged about 150 events a year. Last year and this year it's going to be almost 300. Now,
Wow.
Events also include the non-public kinds of rehearsals and support things. I mean, when the ballet company comes in,
Right.
they have about a week of rental just to prepare the show. But that still is a pretty significant jump. The other thing to remember is that from Labor Day to Memorial Day, which is the theatrical traditional season,
Right.
a lot of our business are rentals. Third-party people coming out, outside groups renting the KiMo for whether it's a week or a night or whatever. From Memorial Day through Labor Day, that business pretty much drops down so that we are able to do a lot of which is why you'll notice that our film schedule increases significantly this summer because we have just more available inventory of nights to fill.
Okay. And filling those, I mean, you've had everything, theater, musical, dance, concerts, opera, and both live opera and live feeds.
Right.
That you do, and even a burlesque show or something now
Oh,
and
yeah,
then?
well, again, in the traditional season, we have the local, the New Mexico Ballet Repertory Theater of New Mexico, which is there 3 times a year. They're there for the entire month of December with Nutcracker. They come back in February. They come back in May. The New Mexico Young Actors are there twice a year with 2 separate performances, one in November, one in usually April. Again, it's theater for young audiences with kids performing, performances by kids for kids. We've been the home for the New Mexico Philharmonic's Intro to Classic series. Around every Valentine's Day, Berkeley Burlesque comes in and does their big burlesque show, which sells out for 2 performances. The Albuquerque chapter of the American Institute of Architects has their annual lecture series there.
Right.
So it is a very, very, as I like to remind our staff, every week is going to be completely different because every week is completely different when you have that kind of scheduling.
How big a staff do you have there, by the way, to do 300?
There are
here?
3 of us from the city and 3 to 4 that are contractors. So there's about 7 people total.
Wow. To run that 300, well,
Yes, sir.
more than 300 days a year.
Keeps us busy.
Yes, I bet it does. Well, let's talk. I want to talk about the movie series,
Sure.
because after all, the KiMo was originally primarily a movie theater. I've seen some really great stuff there. I think Casablanca was this
Yes.
year. That was part of the Humphrey Bogart series. And I remember 3 years ago, one of the best experiences I ever had was watching Metropolis.
Yes.
With the restored version of Metropolis with the live band. And then you had the Stanley Kubrick series last summer.
Yes.
Clockwork Orange, I believe I saw.
Yep.
And you've got the Hitchcock series.
Well, it's been a lot of fun because let me talk a little bit about the equipment, if we can do the upgrade. With the thanks to the citizens of Albuquerque and who approved a GeoBond, we were able to install a cinema quality projector, and we've got a cinema quality screen now, and we've got Dolby 7.1 surround sound. So the actual projection system that we have at the KiMo is comparable, and in many cases is the exact same equipment that you have at the commercial movie theaters, Rio 24 or the Premier Cinema in Rio Rancho or Cinema 12 right down the street from us. So we have the exact same equipment, you're just in a much cooler room. However, what we decided was, as putting together these programming ideas, is that the mixing of the programming at the KiMo, really, we're not going to be in competition with the big movie theaters because we really don't want to be showing the hottest, greatest, newest release. What we have discovered as we've been doing all this stuff is that we have a really good market for classics.
Right.
As a good example, the Humphrey Bogart series, we had almost 400 people come to see Casablanca. Now you would think, how many times have you seen that at home? Which is true. Yes. But very few people have seen Casablanca on a 30-foot wide screen. And that's what we have discovered seems to be what works, is that we're trying to really build a reputation of classics, stuff that you haven't seen for a while, stuff that you may not see at all, so it really allows us to develop a whole different kind of programming mix.
Yeah. And it does, that was in fact the first time I'd seen Casablanca on a wide screen. I wasn't around when it came out, so that was a new one for me.
Sure.
Well, I just want to talk briefly about the series that you have. You have a European classics series.
We're trying to do some foreign film, and these are not the new foreign films. These are in fact what we've tried about a year ago were the things that are sort of the standard classical when you think of a foreign film. So this year we've got Red Desert. We've got a Fellini film, which from the mid '80s. We're going to be doing a couple from Spain, which we thought would be kind of fun. We're going to be doing 3 or 4 classic French films, starting with from the early 1940s or the mid 1940s, Beauty and the Beast. Then we're going to be doing a Truffaut. Then we're going to be doing Catherine Deneuve in Indochine, which I think will be fairly interesting. And then we're going to end the series with some classic Ingmar Bergman, his very first really major film, Something from the Middle, and then Fanny and Alexander, which was the last film, big major film that he made. So it kind of gives us a retrospective sense of, when European film was really, really hot from right after the Second World War to the mid 1980s. These are some of the high points. Not all of them, because
I noticed Children of Paradise.
Yes,
which is one of my all-time favorites, considered by many basically the Gone with the Wind of French cinema, essentially.
Absolutely,
so if you haven't seen that movie, you need to go see that movie.
And those are going to be on Thursday nights. Ticket prices are very reasonable, like $7 for adults, $5 for kids. You can buy your tickets online on our ticketing service or buy them at the door. So it's just an opportunity for us to bring to Albuquerque some of the really classic foreign films that people either have never seen or haven't seen in a long time. And it's kind of like Casablanca. I haven't seen it for a while, or I saw it on TV. It'd be kind of fun to see it in a big theater with a big screen with great sound, great projection, and have that experience all over again.
Okay. Now, speaking of classic stuff, you have your Wednesday cinema series, which is currently featuring Marilyn Monroe.
Marilyn Monroe. It was interesting. A year ago, we tried documentaries, and they did okay. But we thought, well, let's try something. Let's throw a really big name in there. And so we kind of kicked a bunch of people around. And then, as I was talking to you earlier, one of my major challenges, of course, is I just can't go to Hastings and buy the DVD and show it. I actually have to have a license because that's the law. So it turns out that the bulk of Marilyn Monroe's career was with 20th Century Fox. So I was able to contact at Fox and say, how many of these films do you have in the new electronic version? and that's how they license them. So the first, I think, 7 or 8 films in that series are all from 20th Century Fox. So so we have those licenses. We have a couple more that we're hoping to show later in the summer, but candidly, those contracts and those licenses are still being negotiated. So until I get the actual signed contract that says, yes, you have our permission to show Sound Like a Hot, then we can't promote it yet. But it should be on the list, so it's around the corner.
And what you already do is All About Eve, which is, of course, the classic with Betty Davis and the famous line about fasten your seatbelts.
Yes, it's going to be a bumpy night, yes.
Right.
But it was also the film. Marilyn Monroe actually has a very small role in it. She played George Hunter's girlfriend. But it's the film that really kind of started people going, oh, who's this lady? This is pretty cool, you know.
Yeah,
and it's sort of, it's not her first film, but it's the one that kind of what people started saying, there's something here that's really cool. And then we get into How to Marry a Millionaire, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, you know, the 7-Year Itch and Bus Stop, which are all of the
7-Year Itch, of course, is the famous billowing skirt over the great scene. So you know, there's something in all these movies worthwhile.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, Friday Fright Night.
How's
that been going?
Friday Fright Nights we've been doing for a couple of years now. We thought it'd be kind of fun to bring back classic horror films. And so this year we decided to go back to, now most people don't know that Universal Studios in the mid-1920s had a phenomenal success with Lon Chaney Sr. He was like the most popular movie star of the 20s.
Okay.
And he worked for Universal and made them a whole lot of money. In the early 1930s, Carl Laemmle Sr., who was the president, he was Universal Studios, got tired of it and said to his son, Carl Jr., I'm going to put you in charge of day-to-day. Now, I'm still the boss, but you get to run day-to-day operations.
Okay.
Carl Laemmle Jr. was the guy who brought Dracula and Frankenstein, all those really classic 1930s horror films.
Okay.
And so from about 1932 to about 1945, Universal was the Hollywood house of horror.
Okay.
So every great major Hollywood horror movie probably came out of Universal.
Yeah.
And Carl Laemmle made a lot of money. I mean, there's a great story that when they were shooting Dracula, Carl Laemmle Jr. also knew that there was a huge market south of the border. So when Bela Lugosi and that whole crew stopped shooting at 5 o'clock during the day, a whole nother crew that spoke Spanish came in and they shot Dracula in Spanish and then sent it south of the border. You know, so he was one of the one of the real pioneers, realizing that there's this huge market. Yeah. So so what we decided to do is we took the series and cut it in half. Really great. I lovingly call them, these are the best of the bad B movies.
Okay.
Okay. So you've got The Black Cat, which is the first pairing, the first Black Cat, because it was shot twice. Right. The first Black Cat was the first movie that Boris Karloff and Lugosi made together.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and then you work your way through. We've got, let's see, let me look at The Raven, Bride of the Frankenstein, the Werewolf of London, which is the first werewolf movie which was not Lon Chaney Jr., but was the first introduction of the werewolf movies. And then in the 40s, you started doing other things, like they did a revision of Black Cat. We've also got the first, well, not the first, but the color version of The Phantom of the Opera with Claude Rains. Okay. And then all the Frankenstein movies, you know. So it was really sort of an opportunity for us to explore that level of, you know, B-class kind of campy, funny horror films, which I think are, because we've actually done all the classics. So it was an idea for us to revisit the genre and dig out and bring to the community some of the lesser known, really great bad horror movies.
Great. Well, we just have a couple minutes left. Aside from the movies, what other things you have coming up this summer?
This summer we will have the 48-Hour Film Project, which is a great organization. They get teams of 40 to 50 filmmakers and they make 5-minute films. Right. And then they have to have a prop, a character, and a line of dialogue in all the movies. They actually get judged, and then a week later we bring back the best of the 48-hour. This is like a national, this is an international competition, so that actually the winner then gets to go on and competes. And a couple of years ago, I think the Albuquerque film actually took best of about 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah. The bodybuilding competition, it's natural bodybuilders. So we have the preliminaries are at 11 o'clock in the morning, and I don't have the date in front of me. I hope you do. And then we do the finals. So we have that going on. So that's a very interesting kind of event. We don't have a lot of music this summer, but again, the music events that come to the KiMo are often third-party rentals. People like A&P Concerts, Neil Copperman's group will bring in Arlo Guthrie or Jesse Cook, which is always kind of fun to have really marquee names come in. Joe Anderson Productions has also brought in a lot of stuff. So, but right now, the summer, we don't have a lot of music offering because we have a lot of film.
Yeah, great. Well, before we go, where can people go find the schedule online?
Your best bet is to go to our ticketing site, which is KiMoTickets.com.
Okay.
It has a calendar, so you can look at by month, see what's going on. You can also then click on it, and it'll give you more information, to give you a little more information about the film.
Great.
And it also allows you then, if you want to buy your tickets ahead of time, you can actually buy your tickets online, and it only costs you $1.
That's great.
Great price.
Plus, you guys have popcorn and reasonable concessions over
Reasonable
there.
popcorn, reasonable soda. Popcorn's $1 and a refill's $0.25.
Great, great. That's worth going there just for
There you
that.
go.
So anyway, Larry, thanks again for
You bet.
coming down and talking to us. Appreciate it, and hope everybody gets out to see some of the movies out there this summer.
Thanks for the invitation.
So,
Appreciate it.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us on Coming to the KiMo. We'll see you next time.